The day I discovered the truth about the house began like any other Tuesday. I was folding laundry in our living room, surrounded by the familiar signs of a home in need of repair. Water stains on the ceiling, creaky floorboards, and that persistent draft from the windows we couldn't afford to replace. My hands moved mechanically over our children's clothes, while my mind wandered to the conversation I'd had with Scott just weeks before about the urgent need to fix our roof before winter. "We just can't afford it right now, Lillian," he'd said, his voice carrying that edge of finality I'd grown accustomed to whenever money came up. "Maybe next year." The same answer I'd received about the windows, the heating system, and countless other repairs our 15-year-old house desperately needed. Yet somehow, Scott had found the money to buy his mother a new house. "Mom needs a decent place to live," he'd announced one evening, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "The stairs in her old place are getting too difficult for her." I'd nodded, swallowing my questions along with my pride. After all, Ashley was getting older, and her current apartment wasn't ideal. I told myself this was the right thing to do, even as I glanced at the bucket catching drips from our leaking roof. But on that Tuesday afternoon, everything changed. My phone buzzed with a message from David, an old family friend I hadn't heard from in years. "Lillian, I need to talk to you about the house on Maple Street. It's important." My heart skipped a beat. Maple Street was where Ashley's new house was located. I called David immediately, stepping onto our back porch where the kids wouldn't overhear. His voice was hesitant, careful. "I was doing some work there yesterday," he said. David was a local handyman. "Lillian, that house, it's not what you think. I saw things that didn't add up. The furniture, the decorations, they're not Ashley's style at all. And there were other things." My hands trembled as I gripped the phone tighter. "What other things, David?" "Women's clothes in the closet, but not Ashley's size. Makeup on the bathroom counter. Recent magazines scattered around. Lillian, someone's living there, but it's not Scott's mother." The world tilted sideways. I sat down hard on the porch steps, my mind racing through the past few months. Scott's late nights at work, the sudden business trips, the new passwords on his phone. All the pieces I'd refused to see were suddenly falling into place. When Scott came home that evening, I watched him kiss our children goodnight with the same gentle attention he always showed them. How could this man, who taught our daughter to ride a bike and never missed our son's baseball games, be living such a double life? I waited until the kids were asleep before confronting him in our bedroom. "I know about the house on Maple Street," I said quietly. "I know it's not for your mother." The color drained from his face. For a moment, he stood frozen, like a deer in headlights. Then his expression crumpled, and I saw something I'd never seen before, pure panic in his eyes. "Lillian, I can explain," he started, but his voice shook. In that moment, I realized that whatever explanation he was about to give wouldn't be the truth. Not the whole truth anyway. And as I stood there in our bedroom with its peeling wallpaper and worn carpet, I felt something inside me harden into resolve. I held up my hand to stop him. "No," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I don't want explanations tonight. What I want is for you to leave. Now." But as Scott grabbed a few things and headed for the door, I had no idea that this was just the beginning. The house on Maple Street wasn't just hiding Scott's secrets. It was about to unravel everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my family, and myself. The night after Scott left, I couldn't sleep. I lay in our bed, my bed now, staring at the water-stained ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. The children were asleep down the hall, blissfully unaware that their world was about to change forever. Grace, our 12-year-old, had asked where Dad was going with his overnight bag. I'd managed a weak smile and told her he needed to help Grandma Ashley with something. Another lie to add to the growing pile. But what choice did I have? Around 3 in the morning, I got up and did something I'd been avoiding. I opened Scott's home office. He'd always kept it locked, claiming he needed privacy for work calls and confidential documents. Now, staring at his meticulously organized desk, I felt like I was looking at the workspace of a stranger. Everything was precisely arranged, just as he liked it. Scott, the perfectionist. Scott, the provider. Scott, the liar. My hands trembled as I opened his desk drawers. Most contained exactly what you'd expect: office supplies, files, receipts. But in the bottom drawer, beneath a stack of old tax returns, I found a small leather-bound notebook. Inside were numbers, dates, and notes written in Scott's precise handwriting. My eyes caught on entries about house payments, furniture deliveries, and utility setups, all for the house on Maple Street. The more I read, the more my anger grew. While I'd been patching up our children's clothes and cutting coupons to make ends meet, he'd been furnishing another house. While I'd watched water damage spread across our ceiling, he'd been installing new appliances somewhere else. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was financial, practical, tangible. My phone buzzed, making me jump. A text from Ashley. "Lillian, dear, is everything all right?" Scott just called me sounding upset. My mother-in-law's message hit me like a physical blow. Ashley didn't know. She had no idea about the house supposedly bought for her. The realization made me sink into Scott's office chair, my legs too weak to hold me. I'd always had a good relationship with Ashley. Unlike the stereotype of the difficult mother-in-law, she'd welcomed me into the family with open arms 20 years ago. She'd been there for both my pregnancies, taught me her secret recipe for apple pie, and never criticized my parenting choices. Now I wondered, how would this affect her? Should I tell her the truth? Before I could decide what to reply, another text came through, this time from my sister Rachel. "Just checking on you. You didn't sound right when we talked yesterday." I hadn't told her about David's call or what I'd discovered, but Rachel had always been able to read me like a book, even over the phone. Dawn was breaking when I finally left the office, the notebook tucked securely in my bathrobe pocket. As I started coffee and prepared to wake the kids for school, my mind raced with questions. Who was living in that house? How long had this been going on? And most importantly, what was I going to do now? Grace appeared in the kitchen doorway, her school uniform already on, hair neatly braided. She'd been doing her own hair since she was 9, insisting she was too old for me to help. Now she stood there, looking so grown up and yet so vulnerable, and asked, "Mom, why didn't Dad come home last night?" I opened my mouth to give another evasive answer, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the exhaustion, or maybe it was the weight of all the lies already surrounding us. But I couldn't add another. "Sweetie," I said, patting the kitchen stool next to me, "we need to talk." But before I could continue, my phone rang. Scott's name flashed on the screen, and Grace's eyes lit up. "Is that Dad? Can I talk to him?" I stared at the phone, my finger hovering over the answer button. Through the kitchen window, I could see our neighbor Mrs. Jones getting her morning paper. She waved cheerfully, unaware of how my world had imploded overnight. Everything looked so normal, so ordinary, while my life was spinning out of control. The phone kept ringing, and Grace kept watching, and suddenly I knew whatever I did next would set the tone for everything that followed. This wasn't just about Scott's betrayal anymore. It was about what kind of mother I would be in this crisis, what kind of example I would set for my children, and what kind of woman I would become. I picked up the phone, but before I could speak, Scott's voice came through, urgent and pleading. "Lillian, don't go to the house. Please. There are things you don't understand." His words sent a chill down my spine, not because of what he said, but because of what he didn't say. He wasn't denying anything. He wasn't apologizing. He was just trying to keep me from discovering more. I looked at Grace, her innocent face full of expectation, then down at the notebook in my lap with its damning evidence. In that moment, I made a decision that would change everything. "Actually, Scott," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart, "I think it's time I paid a visit to Maple Street, and I'm bringing your mother with me." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I picked Ashley up at 9 that morning, after dropping the kids at school. She was waiting on her porch, elegant as always in her powder blue cardigan, confusion evident on her face. "Lillian, dear, what's this all about?" Scott called me 3 times this morning, but he wasn't making any sense. The drive to Maple Street was the longest 15 minutes of my life. How do you tell a mother that her son has been living a lie? That the house she supposedly needed wasn't for her at all? I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles turning white. "Ashley," I began carefully, "What has Scott told you about a new house?" She looked puzzled. "A new house? Nothing at all. Why would he? I love my apartment. I've been there for 12 years now." She paused, studying my face. "Lillian, what's really going on?" We turned onto Maple Street and I felt my stomach clench. The house stood there, pristine and perfect, with its freshly painted shutters and manicured lawn. Everything our family home wasn't. Everything Scott had denied us while secretly building this other life. I parked in the driveway, next to a silver Volvo I'd never seen before. Ashley's confusion deepened. "Whose house is this?" "Lillian, you're scaring me." "According to Scott," I said, my voice barely steady, "it's yours. He bought it for you because the stairs in your apartment were getting too difficult." The color drained from Ashley's face. "That's ridiculous. I would never let him buy me a house while you and the children—" She trailed off, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh, Lillian." "No." Before either of us could say more, the front door opened. A woman stood there, maybe a few years younger than me, wearing an expensive-looking yoga outfit. Her expression shifted from confusion to alarm as she saw us in the driveway. "Can I help you?" she called out, but her voice wavered. She knew who we were. I could see it in her eyes. Ashley stepped forward, her usual gentle demeanor replaced by something I'd never seen before. Pure maternal fury. "Young lady," she said, her voice ice-cold, "I believe you're in what was supposed to be my house." The woman, I later learned her name was Rebecca, crumpled right there on the front porch. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "I never knew he was still married. He told me you were separated, that the divorce was almost final. He said he stayed at your house sometimes just to see the kids." Each word was like a knife, but I forced myself to stay calm. Ashley, however, was already striding toward the porch. "How long?" she demanded. 2 years, Rebecca whispered. "We met at his gym. He said he was lonely, that his marriage was over in all but paper, that he needed to stay for the children's sake." She looked at me pleadingly. I swear, if I'd known the truth, 2 years. The words echoed in my head. 2 years of lies. 2 years of watching our home fall apart while he built this perfect life with someone else. 2 years of believing his excuses, his stories, his carefully constructed reality. Ashley reached for my hand, squeezing it tight. "Show us everything," she commanded Rebecca. "Every room, every detail. My son has a lot to answer for, but first, we need to know exactly what we're dealing with." The next hour was surreal. We walked through the house, a house that could have been torn from the pages of a home magazine. Everything was new, pristine, expensive. The kitchen had marble countertops. The bathroom had heated floors. The master bedroom? I couldn't even look at it. But it was the small details that broke me. A framed photo of Scott and Rebecca on a beach I didn't recognize. His favorite coffee mug in the kitchen cabinet. A drawer full of his clothes. All new. All things I'd never seen. Ashley was silent throughout the tour, but I could feel her trembling beside me. This wasn't just my betrayal anymore. It was hers too. Her son, her only child, had used her name to cover his lies. As we were leaving, Rebecca stopped me. "There's something else you should know," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm pregnant." The world tilted sideways. Ashley grabbed my arm, steadying me. Through the roaring in my ears, I heard Rebecca continue. "I just found out last week." "I haven't told him yet. I was waiting for the right moment." I looked at this woman, this stranger who had been living my husband's other life, and felt something unexpected. Pity. She was another victim in Scott's web of lies, however unwitting. Back in the car, Ashley turned to me. "Take me to him," she said firmly. "Right now." "Ashley, I don't even know where he is." "Oh, I know exactly where he is," she replied, her voice hard. "When he's upset, he always goes to the same place, his father's old fishing cabin. He's been doing it since he was a teenager. It's time we had a family meeting." As I started the car, my phone buzzed with a text from Grace's school. In the chaos of the morning, I'd forgotten. Today was her ballet recital. She'd been practicing for months. "Mom, don't forget, 2 p.m., the message read. I looked at the clock. 11:30 a.m. then at Ashley, who was already pulling up directions to the cabin on her phone. Then thought about Rebecca, alone in that perfect house with her imperfect news. Sometimes life doesn't give you clean choices. Sometimes every path forward is messy and painful. But as I sat there in the driveway, I realized something important. For the first time in years, I was the one choosing which path to take. "Ashley," I said, starting the car, "we need to make a stop first. There's a ballet recital at 2 p.m., and I promised my daughter I wouldn't miss it." Ashley's face softened. "Of course," she said. "The children come first. Always." She paused, then added, "And Lillian, whatever happens next, you're still my daughter. That will never change." As we pulled away from Maple Street, I glanced in the rearview mirror at the perfect house with its perfect lawn and its imperfect secrets. Scott would have to wait. Right now, I had a promise to keep to my daughter. And this time, at least one parent would be telling the truth. The school auditorium was already filling up when Ashley and I arrived. Parents clutched bouquets and cameras, their faces bright with anticipation. How strange it felt to sit among them, carrying the weight of this morning's revelations, while everyone around us buzzed with ordinary excitement. "Mom! Grandma!" Larry, my 9-year-old, came bounding down the aisle. "You're here early." He was supposed to be in class, but I knew he'd gotten permission to watch his sister's performance. His face fell slightly as he looked around. "Where's Dad?" Ashley squeezed my hand under the program she was pretending to read. I forced a smile. "Dad had some important work to take care of, buddy, but we're recording everything for him." Larry's disappointment was visible, but he nodded bravely. "Grace is really nervous," he confided. "She messed up her pirouette in rehearsal, and now she thinks she'll mess up during the show. Why don't you go backstage and tell her we're here?" Ashley suggested. "That might help calm her nerves." As Larry darted away, Ashley turned to me. "You're doing wonderfully," she whispered. "One moment at a time." My phone buzzed again. Scott. I'd ignored his calls all morning, but this text made my blood run cold. "I just spoke to Rebecca. Please, let me explain everything. The kids don't deserve to have their lives blown up over this. The kids don't deserve." As if I was the one destroying our family by uncovering his lies. I turned off my phone just as the lights dimmed. Grace's class was performing Swan Lake. She was one of the Cygnets, her small frame draped in white tulle. As the music started, I watched my daughter move across the stage with the other girls. Her face was a mask of concentration, every movement careful and precise. Then came the pirouette she'd been worried about, and she nailed it. The pride on her face in that moment nearly broke me. I thought about all the Sunday afternoons I'd spent driving her to dance classes while Scott was supposedly catching up on work. Had he been with Rebecca then? Had he watched our daughter's previous recitals knowing he was building a life with another woman? A life that might now include another child? The applause jolted me from my thoughts. Grace's class was taking their final bow, all nervous smiles and flushed cheeks. "She was perfect," Ashley whispered, dabbing at her eyes. Backstage was chaos. Excited children, proud parents, flowers everywhere. Grace flew into my arms, still high on adrenaline. "Mom, did you see? I didn't mess up." "You were amazing, sweetheart." I hugged her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. Every single step. "Can we FaceTime Dad? I want to tell him about the pirouette." Before I could respond, a familiar voice cut through the backstage chatter. "No need for FaceTime, princess. I'm right here." Scott stood in the doorway, still in his work suit, holding a bouquet of pink roses, Grace's favorite. Our daughter squealed and ran to him, but I felt frozen in place. Ashley stiffened beside me. "I couldn't miss my girl's big day," Scott said, hugging Grace. His eyes met mine over her head, pleading. "I thought maybe we could all go get ice cream to celebrate." "Ice cream?" Larry appeared from nowhere, always able to sense the possibility of dessert. "Can we go to Giovanni's?" The children looked at me expectantly. Scott kept his arm around Grace, the perfect picture of a proud father. Anyone watching would see a normal family celebrating a special moment. Only Ashley and I knew about the house on Maple Street, about Rebecca, about the baby that would change everything. I opened my mouth to say no, to protect my children from this man who had been living a lie. But Grace spoke first. Please, Mom? It's been forever since we all went out together. Forever. Because their father had been building another life, preparing for another child, while theirs fell apart. But looking at their hopeful faces, I made another hard choice. Ice cream sounds great, I said, my voice steady. But Grandma and I need to talk to your father first. Why don't you two wait with Mrs. Peterson? I nodded toward Grace's dance teacher. We'll only be a few minutes. As soon as the children were out of earshot, Ashley stepped forward. Outside, she said to her son, her voice leaving no room for argument. Now, we found a quiet spot behind the school, away from the celebrating families. Scott looked between us, his confidence faltering. Mom, what are you doing here? I was just about to ask you the same thing about that house on Maple Street, Ashley replied coldly. The one you supposedly bought for me. Scott's face went white. He looked at me, realization dawning. You took her there? Lillian, I told you not to. You told me? My voice shook with anger. You've lost the right to tell me anything, Scott. We met Rebecca. We saw everything. And she told us her news. He stumbled back as if I'd struck him. Her news? Don't play dumb, Ashley snapped. The baby, Scott. Your baby. While that house you bought sits there perfect and new, your children have been living with a leaking roof. While you've been playing house with another woman, your daughter has been practicing ballet in a studio with broken heating. How could you? Scott sat heavily on a nearby bench, his head in his hands. I never meant for any of this to happen. Rebecca was she was an escape. From the pressure, from the responsibilities. I know it was wrong, but I couldn't seem to stop. And then one lie led to another, and another. Save it, I cut him off. Right now, we're going to get ice cream with our children. We're going to smile and celebrate Grace's performance. But tomorrow? Tomorrow you're going to tell them the truth. They deserve that much. The truth? He looked panicked. Lillian, they're too young. Age-appropriate truth, Ashley interjected. But truth nonetheless. No more lies, Scott. Not to your children, not to your mother, not to either of these women you've betrayed. She straightened her spine. Now fix your tie. Your daughter is waiting for her ice cream. As we walked back to the school, I felt oddly calm. Perhaps it was the shock, or perhaps it was the knowledge that after today, nothing would ever be the same. But one thing was certain. I was done living in the shadow of Scott's lies. The children were waiting by Mrs. Peterson's car, Grace still in her ballet costume, Larry already discussing ice cream flavors. They looked so innocent, so unaware of how their world was about to change. Mom, Grace called out, can I keep my costume on for ice cream? Please? I smiled at my daughter, my beautiful, brave girl who had faced her fears and nailed that pirouette. Of course you can, sweetheart. Today is your day to shine. And as we headed to the parking lot, I realized maybe it was my day to shine too. To step out of the shadows and into whatever light awaited on the other side of truth. The morning after the ice cream celebration felt surreal. I'd barely slept, spending most of the night sitting in our worn living room armchair, watching dawn creep through the windows. Today was the day we would tell the children. The day we would shatter their world with truth. Ashley had insisted on being present, both for support and to ensure Scott didn't try to sugarcoat things. She arrived early, armed with freshly baked cinnamon rolls, comfort food for the difficult morning ahead. The familiar smell filled our kitchen, a bitter contrast to the conversation we were about to have. I made tea, I said, watching her arrange the rolls on a plate. My hands shook slightly as I poured. Scott should be here soon. How are you holding up? Ashley asked, taking the cup I offered. I keep thinking about something Grace said yesterday at Giovanni's. Remember when she was talking about her friend Lucy, whose parents got divorced last year? She said Lucy told her the worst part wasn't the divorce itself, but all the secrets that came before it. The whispered phone calls, the strange explanations, the feeling that something was wrong but no one would tell her what. Ashley reached across the counter and squeezed my hand. You're doing the right thing, Lillian. Children are resilient, but they need truth. Even difficult truth is better than comfortable lies. The doorbell rang. Scott, arriving exactly on time for once. He looked like he hadn't slept either, his usual polished appearance slightly rumpled. He carried a folder under his arm, which he placed on the kitchen counter without meeting my eyes. "I've been up all night working on this," he said quietly. "Financial statements, account information, property details, everything you'll need to know." He paused. "I've also drawn up a preliminary separation agreement. It's generous. We'll discuss that later," I replied, my voice cool. "Right now, our children need us to be parents first." Grace and Larry were still asleep upstairs, enjoying their Saturday morning lie-in. Part of me wanted to let them sleep forever, to preserve their last moments of innocence. But at 9 o'clock, right on schedule, we heard Larry's bedroom door open, followed by his footsteps heading to Grace's room, their weekend ritual of watching cartoons together. "Kids," I called up the stairs. "Can you come down? Dad and I need to talk to you about something important." They appeared moments later, still in their pajamas, Larry's hair sticking up in all directions, Grace wrapped in her favorite blanket. They froze halfway down the stairs when they saw all three adults gathered in the living room. "Why is everyone here?" Grace asked, her voice small. "Is something wrong?" "Come sit down, sweethearts." Ashley patted the couch beside her. "Your parents have something they need to tell you." I watched them settle onto the couch, Larry immediately reaching for a cinnamon roll, while Grace tucked herself against her grandmother's side. How many times had we sat in this room together as a family, watching movies, opening Christmas presents, sharing stories about our days? Now we were about to add a very different kind of memory to these walls. Scott cleared his throat. "Grace, Larry, your mom and I need to tell you about some changes that are going to be happening in our family." "Are we moving?" Larry asked through a mouthful of cinnamon roll. "Because Lucy at school moved when her parents split up, and she had to change schools and everything." The room went silent, out of the mouths of babes. "No, buddy," I said gently. "You're not moving. You'll stay here with me in our house." "But, yes, Dad and I are going to be splitting up." Grace's grip on her blanket tightened. "Is this because of the house on Maple Street?" My heart stopped. Scott went pale. "What do you know about that?" he asked. "I heard you and Mom fighting about it," Grace said. "And then yesterday at the recital, I heard Grandma mention it too." She looked at each of us in turn. "Who lives there? Is it really for Grandma?" I glanced at Scott. This was his moment, his chance to start making things right with his children. He took a deep breath. "No, sweetheart. I haven't been honest with any of you. I made some very bad choices that hurt our family, and now I need to take responsibility for them." For the next hour, we carefully explained the situation to our children. We didn't tell them everything. They didn't need to know about Rebecca's pregnancy or all the financial details. But we told them enough, that their father had been lying, that he had betrayed our family's trust, that sometimes adults make terrible mistakes that hurt the people they love. Larry cried when he realized his father wouldn't be living with us anymore. Grace didn't cry at all. She just sat there, her face becoming more closed off with each revelation. When Scott finished speaking, she stood up. "I need to go to my room," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "I have a biology test on Monday that I need to study for." "Grace, honey." Scott reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "Don't," she said. "Just don't." She turned to me. "Mom, is it okay if I go upstairs?" I nodded, recognizing in my daughter the same need I'd felt yesterday, the need for space to process, to begin understanding how the world had shifted beneath our feet. Larry looked uncertain, torn between following his sister and staying with us. Ashley solved the deal Grace by suggesting they go to the kitchen to make hot chocolate, her special recipe that always made things better. Once they were gone, Scott buried his face in his hands. "They hate me." "No," I said, surprising myself with the gentleness in my voice. "They're hurt and confused. There's a difference." I stood up, gathering the empty plates. "They'll need time. We all will." "What do we do now?" he asked. "Now? You leave. You give them space to feel whatever they need to feel. You show up when you say you will. You keep your promises. You rebuild their trust one day at a time." I paused. "And you tell Rebecca the truth about everything. She deserves that much." As Scott gathered his things to leave, I heard laughter from the kitchen. Larry and Ashley, probably making a mess with the cocoa powder. Upstairs, Grace's music played softly through her closed door. Our house might be imperfect, with its leaky roof and drafty windows, but it was real. Everything in it was real. When Scott reached the door, he turned back. "I am sorry, Lillian, for everything." "I know," I said, "but sorry doesn't fix things. Actions do." After he left, I stood in our front hallway, listening to the sounds of my family, broken but not destroyed, wounded but still standing. Through the window, I could see the first spring flowers pushing through the soil in our neglected garden. Maybe it was time to do some planting of my own. The first week after telling the children passed in a blur of practical necessities. I found myself sitting at our kitchen table late one night, surrounded by papers from the folder Scott had left. Bank statements, property records, insurance documents, the paper trail of our shared life together. My coffee had gone cold hours ago, but I barely noticed. "You don't have to do this all at once," Rachel said through my phone's speaker. My sister had been calling daily, offering support from 3 states away. "The divorce lawyers can help sort through all of this." "I know," I replied, rubbing my tired eyes. "But I need to understand it all. I spent too many years letting Scott handle everything. Look where that got us." The numbers told their own story. While our family home had been deteriorating, while I'd been cutting corners and shopping sales, Scott had been maintaining 2 households. The mortgage payments on the Maple Street house alone could have fixed our roof 3 times over. But amid the anger and betrayal, I found something unexpected: clarity. For the first time in years, I was seeing our finances without Scott's filter, and something else became clear. I had options. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in almost 13 years. I updated my resume. Before the children were born, I'd worked as a project manager for a construction company. I'd loved my job, but Scott had convinced me to stay home after Grace was born. "It makes more sense financially," he'd said, "with my salary and the cost of childcare." Now, sitting at my computer, I realized how much experience I actually had. Running a household was project management. Balancing our tight budget was financial planning. The volunteer work I'd done at the children's school involved coordination, leadership, and problem-solving. "Mom?" Grace's voice startled me. She stood in the doorway of my home office. Really just a corner of the living room where I'd set up my old laptop. "What are you doing?" "Looking for a job, actually." I watched her face carefully. "How would you feel about that?" She sat down next to me, pulling her knees up to her chest, a gesture that made her look younger than her 12 years. "Would we have to move?" "No, sweetheart. We're staying right here. But I think it's time for me to get back to work. Not just for the money, but for me." Grace was quiet for a moment. "Lucy's mom got a job after her parents split up. She says her mom seems happier now, even though she's more busy." She paused. "Are you going to be happier, Mom?" The question caught me off guard. Had I been unhappy before? Not exactly, but I'd been diminished somehow, living in the shadow of Scott's decisions, his lies, his other life. "I think," I said carefully, "that I'm going to be stronger, and that will make me happier." Grace nodded, then reached over and straightened the papers on my desk, a small, supportive gesture that brought tears to my eyes. "Larry's worried about who's going to help him with his science project if you're working." "I'll always have time for science projects," I assured her. "We'll figure it out together, as a family." Speaking of which, I took a deep breath. "David called yesterday. He knows someone who can fix our roof at a good price. I thought maybe you and Larry could help me pick out the new shingles." "Really?" Grace's face lit up slightly. "Can we get the kind that look like slate? Madison has those on her house." "We can look at all the options," I promised. "This is our home, and we should all have a say in how we fix it up." Later that day, I had my first job interview, conducted via video call from Ashley's apartment while she watched the kids. The construction company was smaller than my old firm, woman-owned, specializing in residential renovations. "Your experience gap doesn't concern me," the owner, Janet, said. "But I am curious. Why return to work now?" I considered giving a safe answer about wanting to rejoin the workforce. Instead, I chose honesty. Because I recently discovered that letting someone else control all aspects of your life is a dangerous thing. I need to stand on my own feet again, not just for financial reasons, but because I need to show my children what resilience looks like. Janet's face softened. I understand completely. I started this company after my own divorce 15 years ago. She shuffled some papers on her desk. We have a big renovation project starting next month. The hours are flexible and we offer good benefits. Would you be interested in coming in for a second interview? Walking back to Ashley's to pick up the kids, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The world hadn't stopped spinning when my marriage imploded. If anything, it had started spinning in a new, more interesting direction. I found Larry and Ashley in her kitchen, surrounded by the aftermath of what appeared to be a massive baking session. "Mom!" Larry ran to hug me, leaving flowery handprints on my interview outfit. "We made cookies, and Grandma showed me how to make dinner." Ashley smiled, wiping her hands on her apron. I thought it was time he learned his way around a kitchen. Every independent person should know how to cook. The word independent hung in the air between us. Ashley had raised Scott alone after his father died, running a successful small business while being a single mother. She knew something about standing on your own feet. "The interview went well," I told her. "They want me back for a second meeting next week." "Of course they do," she said firmly. "You're capable of far more than you've been allowed to believe." She hesitated. "Lillian, there's something else we need to discuss. I've been thinking about selling my apartment." "What?" "Ashley, no. You love that place." "I do, but I love you and my grandchildren more. The sale would give me enough to help you fix up this house properly. New roof, new windows, everything it needs." "I can't accept that," I protested. "It's too much. Consider it an investment in my family's future," she said. "Besides, that townhouse 2 streets over from you just went up for sale. The one with no stairs and that lovely garden." She smiled. "I'm not getting any younger, you know. It might be nice to be closer to my grandchildren." That evening, after the children were in bed, I sat on our back porch with a glass of wine, looking at the stars through the branches of our old maple tree. The same view I'd had for 15 years, but somehow everything looked different. My phone buzzed. A text from Scott. "Rebecca lost the baby. She's devastated. I don't know what to do." I stared at the message for a long time, feeling a complex mix of emotions I couldn't quite name. Finally, I typed back, "I'm sorry for your loss. Both of you." Then I turned off my phone and went inside to look at roofing samples with my daughter's magazine clippings of slate-style shingles. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new decisions, new steps forward. But tonight, in our imperfect house with its leaky roof and drafty windows, I was exactly where I needed to be, standing on my own 2 feet, surrounded by the love of my children and the strength of my chosen family. The house on Maple Street might have been perfect, but it was built on lies. Our home might need work, but its foundation was solid. And sometimes, that's all you need to build something beautiful. My first day back at work arrived along with the roofing crew. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, adjusting my blazer, a recent purchase from a consignment shop, while the sound of footsteps and equipment rumbled overhead. "Mom!" Larry called from downstairs. "Grandma's here!" Ashley had insisted on helping with the morning routine until we all adjusted to the new schedule. She arrived each morning with breakfast and her signature optimism, making everything seem manageable. "You look perfect," she said as I came downstairs, smoothing my hair nervously. Every inch the professional. Grace sat at the kitchen table, picking at her breakfast. She'd been quieter since Scott's last visit, when he'd told them about Rebecca's miscarriage. The news had confused and upset both children, adding another layer of complexity to their already complicated emotions. "I made your lunch," Grace said, pushing a brown paper bag across the table. Grandma helped. Inside, I found a carefully packed sandwich, an apple, and a note written in Grace's neat handwriting. "You've got this, Mom. Love, E&T." The lump in my throat made it hard to speak. The construction company's office was in a converted Victorian house downtown. Janet met me at the door, her handshake firm and welcoming. "Ready to jump back in?" My first project was a kitchen renovation just outside the city. As I reviewed the plans and budget sheets, muscle memory kicked in. This was familiar territory. Schedules, contractors, materials orders. I found myself suggesting cost-saving alternatives and spotting potential issues before they arose. "I knew you hadn't lost your touch," Janet said after our first client meeting, where I'd managed to solve a design deal grace that had been holding up the project. "Sometimes life forces us to take detours, but it doesn't mean we've lost our way." The days fell into a new rhythm. Ashley would help get the kids to school, then head to her realtor's appointments. She'd decided to list her apartment after all. I'd spend my days juggling client meetings and contractor schedules, learning to navigate this new version of myself. The children had activities most afternoons: Grace's ballet, Larry's baseball, which we managed through a combination of carpools, Ashley's help, and my flexible work hours. Scott kept his scheduled visits with the kids, though they remained distant with him. He tried. I had to give him that. He came to Larry's games and Grace's dance classes, sat through uncomfortable family dinners when it was his night with them. But trust, once broken, takes more than good intentions to repair. One evening, about a month into my new job, I came home to find Grace sitting on the front porch, hugging her knees to her chest. "Everything okay?" I asked, sitting beside her. "Dad wanted to take us to dinner at Giovanni's," she said, "but I told him I didn't want to go. Larry went with him." "You're allowed to feel however you feel, sweetheart." She picked at a loose thread on her jeans. "He keeps trying to act like everything's normal. Like if he buys us ice cream or takes us to our favorite restaurants, we'll forget what he did." She looked up at me. "I heard you on the phone with Aunt Rachel last night, talking about the house on Maple Street being sold." I nodded. After Rebecca moved out, Scott had put the house on the Scottit. The proceeds would help finance our divorce settlement and pay for the repairs our home needed. "Is Rebecca okay?" Grace asked suddenly. "After, the question surprised me. "I think she's having a hard time," I answered honestly. "Loss is never easy." "Do you hate her?" I considered this carefully. "No," I said finally. She was deceived too. Sometimes there isn't a clear villain in a story, just people making bad choices and other people getting hurt by them. Grace leaned against me, something she hadn't done in weeks. "The roof looks really good," she said, changing the subject. "And Larry says his room isn't cold anymore since they fixed the windows." "Our home is healing," I said softly. "Just like we are." Later that night, after the kids were in bed, I sat at my desk reviewing plans for my latest project. A complete home renovation for a recently divorced woman starting over. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. My phone buzzed with a text from Janet. "Client loved your proposal for the sustainable materials. Want to lead the project?" Before I could reply, another message came through. This one from Scott. "The house on Maple Street sold. Above asking price. The lawyer will be in touch about the settlement." I looked around my home office, now properly set up with a desk I'd refinished myself and a pin board covered in material samples and project timelines. Through the new windows, I could see Ashley's lights on in her townhouse 2 streets over. She'd moved in last week. The sound of the dishwasher hummed from the kitchen, and upstairs the children slept safely under our new solid roof. I typed a reply to Janet first. "Yes, I'd love to lead the project." Then to Scott. "Good. Time to close that chapter." My phone buzzed again. A message from Rachel. "How are you really doing, sis?" I smiled, thinking about how to answer. The truth was complicated. I was tired but energized, scared but confident, hurt but healing. I was rediscovering parts of myself I'd forgotten existed while discovering new strengths I never knew I had. "I'm rebuilding," I wrote back. "And this time, I'm the one holding the blueprints." 6 months into my new job, I found myself standing in front of a room full of potential clients, presenting designs for a major renovation project. As I walked them through the sustainable materials options and innovative space solutions, I caught my reflection in the conference room window. I hardly recognized the confident woman in the tailored suit, pointing out features with authority and answering questions with ease. After the meeting, Janet pulled me aside. "The clients were impressed, especially with how you handled their concerns about the budget." She paused, studying me. "I'm promoting you to senior project manager. You've more than earned it." The salary increase would mean I could finally stop depending on Scott's support payments. Financial independence. another step forward. That evening, driving home from work, I got a call from Larry's baseball coach. "Mrs. Anderson?" Larry had a bit of a meltdown at practice. He's okay, but I found my son sitting alone in the dugout, still in his uniform, his mitt lying forgotten beside him. His face was streaked with dried tears. "Want to talk about it?" I asked, sitting next to him. "Dad was supposed to come today," he said quietly. "He promised he'd watch me pitch, but then he called and said he had to work late." My heart ached. "I'm sorry, sweetheart." "It's not just that." Larry picked up his mitt, fidgeting with the laces. "Madison from my class. Her dad got remarried last weekend. She showed us pictures. Everyone looked so happy." He looked up at me, his eyes full of hurt. "Is Dad going to marry Rebecca?" The question knocked the wind out of me. "I don't know, honey. That would be something you'd need to ask him." "But she lost the baby," he said, confusion clear in his voice. "So why would they still be together?" I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. Sometimes adults stay together for complicated reasons. But whatever happens with your dad and Rebecca, it doesn't change how much he loves you and Grace. "Yes, it does," Larry insisted. "Everything's different now. He's different." He threw his mitt down suddenly. "I don't want to play baseball anymore." "Hey," I said gently, picking up the mitt. "Remember what we talked about? About not letting other people's choices stop us from doing what we love?" Larry nodded reluctantly. "Like how you went back to work even though Dad said you didn't need to." "Exactly. And you know what? I love my job. Just like you love baseball." A small smile crept onto his face. "I did pitch really well today. Coach said I'm getting better." "That's my boy." When we got home, Grace was sitting at the kitchen table with Ashley, working on a school project. The scene was so normal, so comfortable. It made my heart swell. This was our new normal. Different from what we'd had before, but good in its own way. Later that night, after the kids were asleep, I got a text from Scott. "Can we talk? It's important." We met at a coffee shop the next morning. Scott looked nervous, fidgeting with his cup. "Rebecca and I are getting married," he said without preamble. "I wanted you to hear it from me first, before the kids." I sat back, letting the news settle. Part of me had expected this, but it still stung. "When?" "Next month. Small ceremony." He hesitated. "We want to include the kids if they're willing. And Rebecca's pregnant again." The world didn't stop spinning. My coffee didn't turn bitter. I just felt calm. "Congratulations," I said, and meant it. "But Scott, this time you need to do things right. No more lies. No more secrets. Those kids have been through enough." "I know." He looked down at his hands. "I've been seeing a therapist, trying to understand why I did what I did, why I hurt the people I claimed to love. And I'm learning that I was a coward. Instead of facing my unhappiness, I created this whole other life. I convinced myself I deserved it, that somehow I could have everything without consequences." He met my eyes. "I'm sorry, Lillian. Not just for the lies, but for making you doubt yourself. You were never the problem." I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago, so uncertain and dependent. I know that now. Walking back to my car, I called Ashley. "Scott's getting married," I said, "and there's another baby on the way." She was quiet for a moment. "How are you feeling?" "Honestly, I'm okay. A year ago, this news would have devastated me. Now it just feels like information, something we need to handle as a family." "You've come so far," Ashley said softly. "I'm so proud of you." That evening, I took the kids out for pizza. As we sat in our favorite booth, I watched them argue good-naturedly over toppings and share inside jokes. They were healing, too, in their own ways. "I have something to tell you both," I said during a lull in their conversation. "It's about your dad." They listened quietly as I told them about the wedding and the baby. Grace's face went blank, her defense mechanism, while Larry pushed his pizza around his plate. "Do we have to go?" Grace asked finally. "No," I said firmly. "You don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with, but I want you to think about it. Not for your dad's sake, but for your own." "What do you mean?" Larry asked. "Sometimes being brave means facing difficult situations. Not because we have to, but because it helps us grow stronger. I smiled at them. Like how I went back to work even though it was scary. Or how Grace still does ballet even though she gets nervous before performances. Or how Larry keeps practicing pitching even when he misses the strike zone. Grace considered this. Will you come with us? If we decide to go? If you want me to, of course. But won't it be weird? Larry asked. Having you at Dad's wedding? I thought about the woman I'd been when I first discovered the house on Maple Street, and the woman I was now. Life is weird sometimes, buddy. But we can handle weird. We can handle anything, as long as we stick together. Later that night, I stood in my bedroom, recently repainted in colors I'd chosen myself, and looked at my reflection. The woman looking back at me wasn't perfect. She had wrinkles from worry and laugh lines from joy. But she was strong. She was real. She was whole. My phone buzzed with a text from Janet. Big client meeting tomorrow. Ready to show them what you've got. I smiled and typed back, always ready. Because that was the truth. Whatever life threw at us next, I was ready. We all were. 1 year to the day after I discovered the truth about the house on Maple Street, I stood in my backyard, surrounded by family and friends. The autumn air was crisp, and fairy lights twinkled in the trees we'd carefully wrapped them around. Music played softly from speakers on the newly built deck, and the smell of grilled food wafted from the kitchen. "Mom!" Grace called from the back door. "Aunt Rachel's here." My sister hurried across the yard to hug me. "Look at this place," she said, gesturing around. "I can't believe it's the same house." Neither could I sometimes. The past year had transformed not just our lives, but our home as well. The new roof had been just the beginning. With my promotion and the settlement money from the Maple Street house, we'd been able to tackle one project at a time. New windows, updated heating, fresh paint inside and out. The deck had been my latest project. Designed by me, built by contractors I now considered friends. "Lillian!" Janet waved from across the yard where she was chatting with Ashley. My boss had become more than an employer. She was a mentor and friend. She'd even hired Larry to help with small tasks around the office during summer break, teaching him about construction and business along the way. The party had been Grace's idea. "We should celebrate," she'd said one morning over breakfast. Not Dad's choices, but our choices. How we got stronger. Looking around now, I saw the truth in her words. Larry was showing his baseball trophy to Rachel's husband, animatedly describing the game-winning pitch that had clinched their team's victory. Grace sat with her friends from dance class, their laughter carrying across the yard. Ashley moved among the guests with her usual grace, now fully recovered from her hip replacement surgery. The real reason she'd moved closer to us. Scott and Rebecca had come too, with their 2-month-old daughter. It hadn't been an easy decision to invite them, but Grace had insisted. "She's our sister," she'd said simply. "Even if everything is complicated." I watched as my daughter cradled her baby sister, her face soft with wonder. Larry hovered nearby, protective and curious. Some wounds heal in unexpected ways. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Ashley appeared at my side, offering me a glass of wine. "Just thinking about that day you came with me to the house on Maple Street," I said. "Did you know then that we'd end up here?" "I knew you were stronger than you realized," she replied. "Sometimes we need to break apart to put ourselves back together better than before." The sound of clinking glass drew everyone's attention. Grace stood on the deck steps, her voice clear in the evening air. "I want to make a toast," she said. "To Mom, who showed us that being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing what's right anyway." Tears pricked my eyes as everyone raised their glasses. Scott caught my gaze from across the yard and nodded slightly, acknowledgement of how far we'd all come. Later, as the party wound down and guests began to leave, I found myself alone on the deck. The yard below was still lit by the fairy lights, creating a magical glow. From here, I could see into Ashley's kitchen window 2 streets over, where she was already preparing tomorrow's Sunday dinner. Through Larry's bedroom window, I caught glimpses of him and his cousins playing video games. Grace's ballet music drifted down from her room, where she was probably practicing for her upcoming recital. My phone buzzed, a message from Janet about Monday's client meeting. Another from Rachel confirming our lunch plans next week. A reminder about Larry's baseball practice, the ordinary rhythms of a life rebuilt. A year ago, I'd stood in our old living room, confronting my husband about a house built on lies. I'd felt lost, betrayed, unsure of everything I thought I knew. Now, I stood on a deck I'd designed myself, surrounded by the evidence of a life I'd chosen to create. The screen door slid open behind me. "Mom?" Grace stepped out, wrapping a blanket around both our shoulders. "Larry wants to know if we can make hot chocolate. The fancy kind, like Grandma taught us." "Of course," I smiled. "Want to help?" As we headed inside, I paused in the doorway, taking one last look at the twinkling lights in the yard. The house on Maple Street had been perfect, too perfect, built on a foundation of deceit. Our home wasn't perfect. It had scars from the past and would probably need more repairs in the future. But it was real, honest, and filled with love, just like us. In the kitchen, Larry was already getting out the cocoa powder while Grace heated milk on the stove. They moved around each other with the easy familiarity of siblings who had weathered storms together and emerged stronger. "Mom?" Larry asked, measuring chocolate into mugs. "Are you happy?" The question made me pause. A year ago, I wouldn't have known how to answer. But now, standing in our warm kitchen with my children, knowing who I was and what I could overcome, the answer was simple. "Yes," I said. "I really am." Because happiness isn't about having a perfect life. It's about being true to yourself, loving fiercely, and having the courage to rebuild when everything falls apart. It's about knowing that some endings are really beginnings in disguise. And this was just the beginning.